Thank you, everyone. All right, so that was a really interesting conversation on the policy and regulatory side of things, and we're slowly going to be migrating into the topic of core deepening. So for our next talk, we're going to have Mihai Grigore and Robert Koschig talking about the DePIN business models, which is quite an hot topic if you think about it. And to introduce a little bit more about Mihai, he builds and invests in a lot of emerging technologies. And his research at Missouri cover base layers, mid-layer infrastructure, DeFi, and consumer apps. And a fun fact about Mihai is that he helped shape the DePIN space when he was at Missouri by actually helping name the current industry of DePIN as in like decentralized physical infrastructure. So with that said, I'm gonna introduce Mihai and Robert.
All right. Thank you so much, Alta. This is joint work together with Robert here from OneConnect. Do you have a pointer for me?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Do you have slides?
Yeah.
I don't know where they would be. I'm not sure. Yes, that is probably this. You don't see me do.
If you want to. Right, very cool. Thanks for the wait. So this is joint work together with Robert. I've been doing this work for the past several years now, and we've been thinking quite a lot about deepening business models and yeah, what they mean and how are deepenings actually sustainable. So broadly speaking, when we think about deepenings, we think about two broad categories here. There are digital resource networks. So think of these like data storage, data compute, data streaming, and so on. And then on the other hand, we have physical resource networks. And here you can think in terms of energy, you can think of Wi-Fi, and pretty much anything that you need for connectivity. Now, you've seen that we have quite a big sample of projects actually listed here, and you might wonder, how are these projects able to sustain themselves? And like literally when we are to simplify things to their root, essentially most of the deepins historically have started with actually building up their supply, so on the red part. And essentially, with the build-up of the supply, you have servicing of the demand over here. And as demand was able to be monetized, then supply was being able to grow. And then as more supply came into the network, the services got diversified, which actually looped in back to servicing out more demand. So essentially, you have a flywheel. You have like a virtual loop. And you might also ask, but isn't that the chicken and the egg problem here? So how to actually make this flywheel work. And we've seen that historically most of the DePINs have started to build up their supply by giving away token rewards, by giving away incentives. And essentially what we see that most of the DePINs give away two types of rewards by either asking the network participants to provide staking, or by actually having them purchase some nodes. And essentially what we see is that around 75% of the digital resource networks use stake for access, or like use staking in order to give away rewards to network operators. And then on the other hand, we have physical resource networks that are in their majority asking their node operators to purchase nodes. That's literally on the supply side, but like more recently we've seen that quite many DePIN projects have actually started to burn fees, to burn revenues, and they're using new models of monetization, like burn and mint equilibrium, and they are able to pretty much help their token survive over time by actually being able to burn some of the fees that they accrue. Now, besides that, so besides the supply side, many DePINs, maybe since 1 year now, have started to also work on the fee side, so on the revenue side. And this is where I will transition to Robert, who has some insights for us on the numbers, on actually how much revenue DePINs are making.
Yeah, thanks. So yes, as the initial slide showed, right, we started to gather data on which DePINs actually generate fees and income. This is for sure not conclusive. There's more. This is basically what you can find on, the general public open source sources like Dune, DeFi Llama, and so on. I mean, there's even more, right? If you think about Helium subscriptions, for example, Helium Mobile, this is purely off-chain, like 3 million a month that just, goes to the foundation. So far, they are about to change that now, right? But this is not included. It just gives a good sense of like, okay, where are we coming from? And then, recently, right, we see Ether, IONET, the digital resource network, compute-based networks, they apparently make a lot of money. There's obviously a caveat. Ether, for example, they use these buyback programs where they say, yes, this money comes from fiat, somebody paid us US dollars, and we buy back the token, but all you see on chain is basically, the token goes to some wallet, and you don't know where the token come from. So there's debate if all this revenue is true revenue or is some other shenanigans. But let's say we give it a benefit of the doubt and believe these numbers, even though, still the other ones, old school protocols like Akash or something, these annualized numbers are still impressive if you think about it. The next question is then, okay, so we see fee growth, right? It's exploding, and we can expect this to grow even more because we have all these protocols out there that didn't even start to monetize yet. How much is big? How is this transferring to basically the tokens? Because most of these protocols, have a token. What we see here is, we touched upon this earlier as well, and we have some token engineers in the group here as well. The core models are very, very similar. The basic concept, the use of token is basically one of these three things. It's 4 columns, but basically it's 3 different things. The easiest one to understand, which everybody but LivePair uses, is value transfer. You can use a token to pay the services of the network, right? You don't need to, but typically in one way or the other, the value transfer is involved. Consensus and work token model, this is what was also touched upon earlier, is pretty easily explained. It's basically you need the token in order to contribute. If you want to run a node, you somehow need the token, typically via staking, right? And then also quite blue is the last value accrual or value capture approach, governance. You have a saying, you have the token, which gives you a vote in management decisions, so to speak, right? This comes in different flavors. Not going too much into detail, the main takeaway is really, okay, so far it's quite similar, which also means, okay, there's probably more we can explore because this is the beaten path so far and works, but maybe there's more we can do. because here we get to the point to say, okay, this is the theoretical approach, work token value transfer, how people use their token. This is what the market says, right? How are people, you put your token out there and then you have the Wild West of like people speculating on your token. And what you can see is digital resource network and physical resource networks live in a different, magnitude. It's a log scale, which makes sense as we saw that these compute networks can scale easily. But what's more interesting even is that if you say you're buying back and burning tokens, you have deflationary mechanism, no matter how much you even do it, it's just you have the mechanism. Typically you get a valuation premium, which is the other part here. And then last but not least, if you run a token and you're out there and you let the market value your token, what we saw is this complicated chart, but what you see on the y-axis is basically a price to sales ratio, right? How much FTV do you have over your annualized income, so to speak? And the x-axis is actually your revenue, annualized. So if all things are valued efficiently and rationally, if you make the same revenue, right, for example, the graph and Covalent, very similar business models, what they do, but why is Covalent so far below? Like the graph has similar revenue, but is valued way higher. Even though similar growth trajectory, similar time in the market, everything is quite similar. What you realize is, okay, there seems to be a tendency that the market values liquidity even more, because also all this blue stuff, these have listings on these big venues like Binance or Upbit. So this is the I think a little bit sad truth that it's not so much about your problem that you solve or the growth fantasy or the community. At the end of the day, valuation is, yes, you put yourself out to the traders and the liquidity, and this is what they value so far. There's obviously more to it. If you, or the good part to this is, if you put it into perspective to where's DePIN in these like price to sales ratios to other industries, you see the L1s and the blockchains, this is just like, yeah, we don't care about fees, right? Bitcoin is not about fees. No, Ethereum also is not about fees. There's some other valuation that you can do, because these price to fee ratios, it doesn't make any sense basically, but stable above 10,000. The more traditional applications, right, decentralized exchanges, 14x, this is also more in line with traditional markets, S&P 500, 20, 30, these are levels that are okay. And the good thing is really what we see as the fees increase, as Mihai showed, or as we showed earlier, actually the valuations come from this like more fantasy land into a more like, rational valuation approach. And yeah, this was a rather quick rundown of our research from, different business models, different token models, value capture, and also how the market values these things. If you want to read more, there is basically 3 parts. Probably there will be more in the future. And yeah, if you want to learn more, you probably go best to our Twitter profiles. And I'm not sure if we still have time for questions. No, we don't. So that's it. Thanks a lot.